While many link her name to Bob Marley's harmony group, the Iceries, they tend to forget that Marcia Griffiths started out as a solo singer in the mid-1960s at Studio One. She scored her first hit with Feel Like Jumping in 1967. In the early 70s, she successfully worked together with Bob Andy as Bob and Marcia, hitting the British international charts with Young Gifted in Black and Pied Piper. When Bob and Marcia parted ways, she started to work with the only female producer at the time, Sonia Pottinger, and released one of her greatest tunes, Stepping Out of Babylon. Around the same time, she became a member of the Iceries and toured the world together with Bob Marley. In the late 80s, she hit the Billboard charts with Electric Boogie, which led to the dance craze Electric Slide. During the 1990s, she worked with Donovan Germain of Penthouse Records, where she bridged the gap between reggae and dancehall by collaborating with artists like Tony Rebel, Cutty Ranks and Buju Banton. Now closing the cycle, Donovan Germain produced the new album Timeless, a collection of her favorite Studio One songs. Despite the accolades Marcia Griffiths has achieved in her career that spans over 55 years, she has always treated music as well as her talent with utmost diligence and has remained humble and approachable. Welcome once again, the Queen of Reggae, Marcia Griffiths. I would like to put the first question to you, Marcia. You started your career at Studio One as a teenage girl. How did you become part of the record label and the famous studio? Did you have to go through those infamous auditions that were kept at Studio One?
Well, greetings everyone. I'm happy that I never had to do an audition. I performed the first time with Byron Lee on Easter Monday morning, 1964, and I was taken on the same day to Studio One, where I went straight in the studio. And I sang a song that was written by a friend of mine, but it's a duet. But of course he got nervous and I ended up doing the song all by myself, which was never released. So when Mr. Dodd heard my voice, he was overwhelmed and he was seeking so hard to find a hit song for me. So he had me doing collaborations with people like Bob Marley, Bob Andy, Tony Gregory, the late Free. But it was not until 67, as you just mentioned, that I had my first hit song. But I never did an audition when I went there.
Okay, so you mentioned Studio One, a legendary place in the history of Jamaican music, and you just spoke about some of the duets that you recorded there. So we want to play a little snippet of some of these tracks and see what you can remember about them specifically. So let's try a bit of track one, and see what you can tell us about it.
Yes, we belong.
Yes. So what do you remember about that song? And you did this with Tony Gregory.
Yes, those were some, being at Studio One, it was like a family affair. Tony Gregory was one of the singers from Byron Lee, and he's a great singer. And even up until now, he's doing, you know, still doing his thing. But Tony Gregory was one of the male artists there that, as I said, we collab with. And it was so nice working with Tony because he's a songwriter himself, and he writes a lot of, because on the flip side of that song is a song that he himself wrote and played on, you know, and it was a hit song as well.
So then give us a little taste of track 2 and let's see if this is what you're talking about. So how old were you when you recorded that, Marcia?
I don't believe that that's me. This sounds like a chipmunk. I was 12 years old when I did that. Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people talk about Studio One as a training ground, but somewhere that was a harsh environment, a difficult place to get a start. What was it like for you at a tender age?
Well, of course, it was male-dominated. When I went there, the only woman I saw there as an artist was Sister Rita. But everyone else was, you know, all male. So I felt a little uncomfortable, but Bunny Wailer was the only one I knew then because we go way back from kindergarten days. So I was more or less confident because I knew, you know, what I was about, and I was sure that I could do what I'm doing. So I never had any doubt in myself then. But when I say a family affair, anyone who is in the studio, of course in those days, the music and the voice goes down one time. That's a 2-track. You don't lay rhythm and then voice. It's just a 2-track, so everything goes on. Can't make any mistake, but whoever is recording, if Ken Booth is recording, people like myself and Bob and they would be doing the harmonies, and vice versa, whoever, you know. Bunny Wailer is voicing, Bob Andy and myself would do harmonies for him. So it was just like one big happy family. And of course, you know, we see it as Jamaica's Studio One.
Yes, Jamaica's kind of Motown.
Motown, that's what I mean, thank you.
Indeed. So I know my fellow chairs on the panel have a lot of questions they want to put to you, but sticking with the Studio One theme, just a few last tracks to give some reminders of. So speaking of this family affair, give us a taste of track 5 and see what you can remember about this one.